14:04. We are live on Love 101, live on JIS, and we are ready for our feature, Good Morning Minister. And in studio, yes, live and in person, we have the Honorable Robert Morgan, Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for information. Good morning, Minister.
Hey, Nadine, thank you very much. Good morning, and good morning to your listeners on Love 101 FM. It's really good to be here. It's the first installment of our series, and we hope to continue to listen to the calls of your listeners to answer their questions, and also to bring on ministers of government so they too can inform the public and answer the question. Today, for our first show, a hot topic that has been on the lips of almost everyone in Jamaica over the past couple of weeks, and that is the whole issue of constitutional reform. It is a very big deal. Primary focus is moving Jamaica to a republic, but there are other issues that are being discussed. We have a constitutional reform committee that is actually meeting as we speak, and the minister was kind enough to step out to join us, Minister Marlene Malahoo Forte, the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. Minister Forte, good morning.
Good morning, Minister Morgan. Good morning, Nadine Blair.
Good morning, Minister. Very happy to have you on, and we're looking forward to the discussion.
You may not know that I have been an avid listener for years.
Wow.
4 years. The station started in 1993, right?
Indeed.
On February 14.
I give you 2 tickets for that now.
Well, at the time, I was a student in Barbados.
Wow.
But when I came home, because you launched on my birthday,
Oh.
Love 101 has been a companion to me for years.
Wow.
I used to drive back and forth between Kingston and Westmoreland when I served as parish judge for St. Elizabeth. I used to find my inspiration and get companionship on my journey through the many programs.
All right. So
do not underestimate the difference you have made for the listening public.
Definitely. Thank you very much,
Thank
Minister.
you so much. I'm going to crop that for a promo.
Yes, we have a free ad, and the talent is good. She has a very eloquent voice. Her tonality was on point. So
I have to get you to do things here, Minister. Awesome.
Minister, thank you for joining us. I know you are in the middle of discussions with the Constitutional Reform Committee. Constitutional reform, or what does it mean for them? Can you start by telling us, why should Jamaicans care about constitutional reform and going to a republic? Why does it matter? Why are we doing this?
Maybe the starting point should be, what is the Constitution? The Constitution is the supreme law of Jamaica. Or any country with a written constitution, what is contained in it represents the supreme law. So it's a collection of principles and policies and laws. Even service clubs have their constitution. For the state, it is the supreme law. It sets out the main institution of the state and of government. It sets out important offices, the powers that are exercised, and then every other law flows from the Constitution. And if you pass a law that is not consistent with the principles and the policies and anything that is in the Constitution, the law is of no good. The legal term is that it would be void to the extent of the inconsistency. So the Constitution is really what sets the stage for everything else in the society.
Thank you very much. So tell me, why should Jamaicans be interested in this reform process? We all know that we have a constitution. We have certain rights that are given to us through the constitution and protected by the constitution through our various mechanisms of the state, such as the courts and so on. So why should Jamaicans care about this process that we're going through now?
Because Jamaica has had a history as a British colony, and the presence of Britain in Jamaica is mixed up with the transatlantic slave trade. and as a colony of, we gained political independence in 1962. But when we did that, we didn't have a say in who was the head of the state of Jamaica. In the community of nations, like you have a community of churches, you have the Jamaica umbrella group of churches, and all churches have a pastor that heads it, and you may have your own structure. In the community of nations, all states have a head of government and a head of state. Your state and the state responsibility exists regardless of who forms government. In a democratic form of government, you have competition to form government. In an autocracy or a one-party state, you have no such competition. You don't have election. So you have a head of state and a head of government. The head of state for Jamaica is someone that we have no choice in, someone who comes to that position in a hereditary way. King Charles III, for whose coronation the world will watch and see on Saturday, is King Charles III, King of Jamaica from the British Empire. So if it matters to you who heads your state, then it should matter to you that constitutional reform is happening of this state. But that's just the start. That's not even the end. If it matters to you what kinds of rights and responsibilities that citizens enjoy, constitutional reform should matter to you. If it matters to you how your government, what your experience with government is, who gets to be part of government, what are the qualifications for you to participate in government, then constitutional reform should matter to you. If you understand, or if you don't know but would like to know how government is organized, constitutional reform should matter to you. So there are three branches of government. You have the executive branch, you have the legislative branch, you have the judicial branch. The executive branch is where you get your head of state, you have the state executive, and you have a political executive. The legislative branch is where you have your parliament, and the parliament has two houses. In one house, people are elected. In the other house, the Senate, people are appointed. And then you have the judicial branch, where you have your courts and your judges. If all of that matter to you and you want to get an understanding of how it works, or if you have ideas of how the arrangements should work better, then constitutional reform should matter to you. If you have questions about the public service and the civil service and how civil servants treat the public and what kind of approach that you take when you interact with government, then constitutional reform should matter to you, because all of the arrangements in government and in the state matters and flow from the Constitution.
Yes. One of the conversations that has been taking place in the society as we go through this process is various groups have been trying to get their word in as to what they would like our new governance structure to look like. There's some who are saying that we should have a elected head of state. Some are saying that we should have a ceremonial president. Some are saying that we should have an executive president. Could you tell the listeners, because there has to be a process, there has to be some sort of process that is outlined somewhere as to how this will be determined. So I know that we're at the stage now where we have the Constitutional Reform Committee and you're doing your public education, but there is some level of confusion by some persons about where we are in the process and what the various roles are, the role of the government, the role of the committee, the role of citizens. Where do citizens fall in the whole process of consideration? Could you give us an idea as to how that works?
Thank you for that question, which has many, many parts. Let me begin with the process. Government is organized in ministries, and the ministries have departments and agencies. And ministries are headed by ministers of government at the leadership level and at the administrative level by permanent secretaries. And the ministries are given subject matters over which fall in their portfolio. And the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs is assigned the subject matter of constitutional reform, among other subject matters. When Jamaica gained independence in 1962, a constitution was prepared. The constitution was drafted right here in Jamaica, but it was never passed by the Parliament of Jamaica. All laws that are acts of Parliament are passed by the Parliament. You have different categories of law, but ultimately it is the Parliament which would give you the power to pass the laws or would delegate the power to someone else, hand it over to someone. So the Constitution that we have now, the 1962 Jamaica Independence Constitution, though it was prepared here in Jamaica with the input of Jamaicans, it was never passed here in Jamaica. It came into effect at Buckingham Palace, the home of the monarch as Jamaica head of state. Part of what we are trying to do now is to say, hold on. In the modern world, countries that are sovereign actually pass their own laws. Countries that are sovereign actually determine their own laws.
Before you go any further, Minister, you said something a while ago that I think majority of Jamaicans had no idea of. You're saying that our constitution was not passed by our parliament.
No, it was not.
And it was basically passed in Buckingham Palace.
Yes, by what they call an executive. It's a schedule, like an appendage, an attachment to an order in council, which is an executive action that was done. So our constitution is not a legal instrument of the Parliament of Jamaica, although what is contained in it was shaped.
That's shocking. So you were saying more about the process.
Right. So the Constitution itself sets out the process by which you can change it. That is how supreme laws are. It tells you that if you are to change it, there is a process that you have to go through. And if you don't go through the process that it sets out, the change will not be valid. I think the same is true for other constitutions, because everywhere where you have rules and you establish processes, if you do things outside of those established processes, people can question whether what was done was properly done. It's like having a meeting and you establish a quorum and it says if you don't meet the quorum, any decision taken would not be valid. If I were to simplify it, that's kind of what it means. So the Constitution have different provisions, and depending on the significance of the provisions, the government and the nation state, those are given different levels of protection, meaning that you have different ways in which you can change them. So there are, generally speaking, three categories of provisions in the Constitution of Jamaica. And they are protected at different levels. So the most important provisions that have the most fundamental consequences for your governance structure and your nation state, they are given the deepest level of protection. It's like they are buried deep in the process, and we use the term deeply entrenched provisions. It just means that they are well protected. And what does that protection look like? It says that before you can change any of those provisions, you have to go through a particular process. And that process involves not only the parliament that passes the law, and in the normal scheme of things would pass it alone, but the people who are elected to vote will have to approve the changes. So anytime anybody hears the term deeply entrenched provisions of the Constitution of Jamaica, it really means the provisions of the Constitution that are given the highest and deepest level of protection. So you can't tinker with them, you can't just change them. So, because in a democratic form of government, ultimately, it's the will of the people that matters. No, the will of the people is expressed in many ways because the people vote for their representatives to be in parliament. And when they do that, they delegate to their representatives certain powers. So not everything comes back directly to the people, but some things are non-delegable. You can't delegate it. And those are the things that the Constitution gives the highest level of protection to. And those matters in the Constitution of Jamaica are specified. I don't get to choose them as the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. The people of Jamaica right now don't get to choose them. But after we reform the Constitution, we can collectively decide going forward which matters we want to give this high level of protection that the parliamentarians alone can't change. So if you're interested in that, then you should be interested in constitutional reform.
So, but I want to, before you go any further, I just want to tell the listeners that in a few minutes we will be taking their calls. They can call us on 968-8326, 968-8327, or you can WhatsApp 997-3125. That's 968-8326. And we will give you the correct number shortly. But Minister, so tell us the big one that people have been talking about, and it is something that we've been talking about for many years, from even before I was born, and I won't tell you my age on air, is the Republic. Where does this stand in the whole conversation?
All right. So every country has a form of government. The form of government that we have in Jamaica is what you call a constitutional monarchy, because the Constitution indicates that the executive authority of Jamaica is vested in His Majesty as a successor to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. And it says that the Parliament of Jamaica consists in His Majesty, a Senate, and the House of Representatives. Now, once upon a time, kingdoms and monarchies reigned by kings and queens were the norm of the day. And even in Africa now, you still have many kingdoms and tribal places, but that form of governing people was the norm of the day. And Jamaica, people don't know that Jamaica is somewhat a kingdom. We are the realm of the kingdom, the British Empire, of the British monarch, because you hear about King Charles III of England, but King Charles III is actually King of Jamaica. And the Republic now is the form of government that emerged as an alternative to the monarchy. So when we say we're moving to a republic, it means that we are moving from a monarchy, because that's what Jamaica is. So the king don't live here and the queen never lived here. Though they have little or no interest in Jamaica except the prestige to say that their empire and dominion include Jamaica. We don't have the benefit
but Minister,
of interacting with them.
Minister,
Yes.
I come from Woodall. I don't bow to no king. I have never bowed to a king in my life.
No, I tell you,
Why
that
should this matter to me? I'm
You
not
are
a farmer in a bush in chopping my cane or running my taxi. I don't care about the king. Why this matter to me to go be republic? We're gonna spend all of this money to get republic. Why wouldn't I use it build some road? That's the reason why I phrase it like that is that that's a conversation I actually literally heard on the street.
It's an important one, and I tell you, because life has been so hard in Jamaica for a long time, people are immediately preoccupied with their bread and butter issues. So you see what has happened in. Let me use an example with the road traffic law. We've had some laws on the book that were never enforced. And so people don't even know of it, or if they know of it, they know that they can just behave in a certain way and it don't matter. And then one day now, a police officer may just get up and say, you know what, let me enforce it. It's like the law with the child seat? One of those laws. If you have a law, even if it is not enforced, the possibility exists that one day somebody who has the authority to enforce it will do so. Just understand that. The fact that you don't know how the king do anything to Jamaica, or if he's so distant, as his mother was distant, loved as she may have been by Jamaicans and revered, is so distant. But the fact is that the executive authority rests in the king, and the Governor General of Jamaica represents the king. Now, in practice, the king don't tell the Governor General what to do, but the Governor General ultimately is appointed by the king. And who is to say that one day the king may not decide simply because the king has the power to do something? People will not understand it because all they would have been familiar with is that it had never happened before. So, in the same way that when you pick up a law and enforce it that has never been enforced in your lifetime, then people start crying out for injustice.
So essentially you're saying that us going to a republic is essentially bringing our rights home.
Yes.
Fulfilling our political independence that we started in 1962.
Yes.
So
and to make sure that whomever ultimately exercises the highest authority in Jamaica is a Jamaican person on behalf of Jamaicans who live here in Jamaica and is loyal to no other country but Jamaica.
But Minister, wouldn't you want somebody who is not biased, somebody who is impartial, who is not PNP or JLP, somebody who lives very far away?
You're hitting it on the head, Minister Morgan. When you put it like that now, you know what you're actually talking about is the difference between an executive and a non-executive president. I said to you earlier that every nation state has a formal head of state and a formal head of government. And the state of Jamaica exists regardless of who forms the government of Jamaica, meaning who is prime minister. The countries that have the head of state and the head of government in one office are countries that came through revolution and revolt and usually have been forced by external pressures to come to that place. Here in Jamaica, we have a primary two-party system. And whether you vote for the party that win the election at the end of the day or not, the prime minister becomes prime minister of everyone. Some people accept that, some people view it in a political partisan way. Our thinking is that we should keep the head of state separate from the head of government, separate from the competitive political process. And that person who occupies the position of head of state will be set apart, but not set apart in a foreign land, but right here, set apart to the point where he or she represents national unity and embodies the bringing together of the nation. And that's why recommendations have been made from time to time that you should have a non-executive president as opposed to an executive president where your state and your politics get mixed up in one. that there is a proper place to separate it out, and especially in a country like Jamaica, where tribalism is still high, though we have made many forward steps to lessen the worst aspects of it. So that's really what you ask, is go to the heart of the difference between an executive and non-executive president. I don't like to use the word ceremonial, because right now in Jamaica, the Governor General does more than ceremonial duties. Some of the ceremonial duties are important because every society have its rituals. Every society, every institution does. And we should never downplay them. They are an important part of our culture, important part of the makeup of our nation. So the thinking of our government and the thinking of the committee so far is that, building on the recommendations made by others before, is to help the people to understand that in Jamaica right now, we would want to keep our politics, the competitive, democratic politics, separate from your state affairs, and put in place a head of state that would be above the partisan politics. Because if you go to, yes, that's really the thing.
In connection with what you're saying, Michael Brown online is saying, what is the difference between, and I think you've explained some of it, between the president and the governor general? Not too many Jamaicans care. Being a republic is for politicians to feel good about themselves.
Right. You know, it's unfortunate that that is the view. Like I say, the republic is a form of government that is an alternative to the monarchy. So unless Jamaicans are saying, let us keep the monarchy, where the king is really a foreign king who doesn't live in Jamaica, that we have to pay to have his representatives here in Jamaica. If we have to pay for a head of state locally in Jamaica, why shouldn't it be a Jamaican head of state? That is, instead of a foreigner. The republic is the alternative form to the monarchy. And in the republic now, people come to their position through merit, not by inheritance.
Yes.
They come to their positions after going through democratic process. So the fact that you may not vote directly for a head of state as one of the models doesn't make it undemocratic, you know, because the people who would be making the decisions are people to whom they who would have gotten that power by virtue of the most democratic of all processes, election. I know some people say, boy, I don't go to vote, so whomever is voted in don't represent me. The fact is that the Constitution gives you a right to vote. It is for you to then go and register because there's a process. And if you choose not to, don't blame someone who exercises their right. Bottom line. The same power that somebody else has, you have been given it. All citizens of Jamaica are given a guaranteed a right to vote. In order to exercise that right, you have to go through a process of registration. You have to reach the age of 18 years because that's the age of adulthood. And and it is organized around constituencies and electoral divisions and polling divisions. Some of the views I hear is like people don't want the work to be organized. But if you don't organize work, confusion and chaos will reign.
We're gonna go exactly to that because that was my next question. But before we go there, Minister, I have Brenda on the line who wants to ask you. Brandon, my apologies. Brandon on the line who wants to ask a question. Brandon?
Yes.
Hi, Minister and Minister
Good morning, Brandon.
Morning.
Minister Malahoo Forte. My question is, since the Jamaican people will have to decide through a referendum, right? Will there be, like, for example, when we're voting for that referendum, will there be a selection on it that says if we vote for an executive president versus a ceremonial president?
All right.
Minister.
The question may not be put like that. We haven't come to designing the question because you don't get to the type of presidency before you get to deciding whether you want to keep the monarch or you want a Jamaican president. So it's a very important sub-question. But the primary question is, do you keep King Charles or do you put in place a Jamaican president? And if Jamaica now, it's what type of presidency. So the way the law is now, that is not the main question, but it's an important sub-question. And it is one of the issues that we're seeking to explain to the public the difference. A lot of people look on in the US and they see that they vote directly for the president, and that's the model. No, that simple act of voting directly for your head of state and the head of government, because the president of the United States is both head of state and head of government in one. And when there is problem between the Republican and the Democrat, it brings the whole of the United States into problem. In Jamaica, PNP and JLP may have problems, but the state of Jamaica exists without it becoming at an international level within the community of nations. You don't bring those matters out to affect responsibility. Yes.
Because I was doing a little question and answer question scenario with my peers, and they were saying why they would vote for executive president versus a ceremonial. They were explaining to me.
Let's not use the word ceremonial. That's part of the problem, because we were taught that the Governor General is titular. It's not just ceremonial function that our current de facto. When I say de facto, mean you're head of state, but you're not really the legal head of state, eh? Right, you're the factual head of state. The Governor General actually is responsible for very important appointments, have substantive powers. Once upon a time, it was only ceremonial, but changes have been made along the way, which puts matters in the Governor General's hands that are above PNP and JLP politics.
Okay. Yeah. So to be clear, Jamaica no longer has a ceremonial Governor General.
No, we don't.
Okay,
we really don't.
A lot of people don't know that, Minister.
Because we don't teach civics in school. The Governor General exercises important executive powers in his own right.
Right. So then the question, I think that
people would want it, but what I think people want is to sort out which powers the Governor General will exercise.
Right.
And that is part of the work that the Constitutional Reform Committee is dealing with.
Okay. Thank you.
And that is one of the things that we want to reason with the people on too. There are some sensitive appointments that have to be made. Like I say, every government, every state has institutions, and the institutions are run by people. And important functions and powers are vested in the institution. So we want to look at those set of institutions that we want to put above.
Let me thank Brandon before you go on, Minister.
Okay.
Brandon, thank you very much. Really important questions. Minister, before you go into that, I think I would love to hear a little bit more from you about this, because many people did not realize that the Governor General actually does work. They thought that the Governor General just sits in King's House and comes out to pin medals on National Heroes Day. But we in government know that the Governor General, sometimes you can't even get him on the phone. He's so busy.
May I tell you, one of the most important functions that the Governor General deal with is who is appointed to the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, that is responsible for the running of general elections, to make sure that neither the JLP nor the PNP can manipulate it for their own good. One of the most important matters dealing with the governance and democratic foundation of Jamaica, and that didn't happen overnight. It came over time. Governor General also does appointment of judges on the recommendation of the Judicial Service Commission. The entire civil service should actually fall under your head of state. And that is how it is designed in Jamaica, but it has not been that way in practice. And it is a major issue that is before us, because what has happened is that over time, the civil service and the public service has become so politicized that if you take worst case example and worst case scenarios, on one extreme, you have people who get in and because of their politics. And they will say, on the one hand, look, man, I don't belong to the party that is in power, So I do nothing to make them look good. You know who suffers from that? The people. And then on the other extreme, you'll hear those say, look, am I party in power? Nobody now fire me. We don't have to do anything. The people suffer.
So you're a committee minister. You have assembled a committee. A lot of people don't even realize that there's a committee. It's not you alone or the government. And it's a committee that comprises members of civil society, members of the opposition, legal luminaries, people who have international credibility. Could you tell us a little bit more as to where we are with that, what type of people are on the committee, and why do we need a committee to do this work?
Very good. From the time the Constitution, Jamaica gained independence in 1962, and we kept the Queen Elizabeth as our head of state, work has been going on to complete the independence, because it is felt that in order to complete the independence, you need to have a Jamaican who is at the head of your state. The executive authority of Jamaica should be vested in a Jamaican, not a foreign king who don't business with us in Jamaica. All right? So over the years, you had work done. Unfortunately, when we gained independence, the record books show that Jamaica enjoyed stability, even though it had many challenges in the 1960s, and we were on a path of growth. The decades of the 70s was characterized by social consciousness, but the social consciousness did not result in any economic gain, and the economy went into serious problems, couldn't afford basic things. Then the 80s emerged when you had to make some structural adjustments to deal with the problems in the economy, because it don't matter how much you care, if you can't finance the things for which government has responsibility, nothing is going to get done. So we went into structural adjustment, including the IMF, all of that. Then you had the 90s. The 90s, the world went global, and you hear about globalization and liberalization, and Jamaican economy was opened up. Most of the people who got the advantage were foreigners coming in, because Jamaicans were still struggling. And our liberalization policies really have not worked as well as they should for Jamaica. But generally speaking, and I'm being very general, it has brought a lot of foreign direct investment into Jamaica. We have a whole lot of other issues that we can talk about. And then in the 2000s now, during that time also, up to the 80s, the two political parties would have rotate in and out of office. Then you went into a period where we had one political party that was in office for 18 and a half years. Then we had a change in government, and we had a global recession. But in spite of all of that, we had the next most fundamental constitutional change, which brought in the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom. And a lot of the work that was done on the Constitution just never got implemented. When we got to Jamaica's 60th year of independence, the nation, we went into a period of reflection. The people were asking the government to reflect, and the government is inviting the nation to reflect on what we have achieved over our 60 years of political independence. Coming out of that was the call for us to continue to take the steps to make Jamaica completely independent. And that raises some important questions. We recognize that you couldn't do it all at once, so we better do it in phases, because a journey of 100 miles begins with a single step. Although we may have started out of bad, some good have come. We have had a stable democracy, we have some things that work, we have many things don't work. So the approach is, let us take stock. Keep the things that have worked and change out the things that have not worked. Ultimately, to give people their best chance for a prosperous life, for a better life, for a way to realize their dreams. And then we had, during Jamaica's 60 years of independence, Queen Elizabeth was represented by the now heir to the throne, Prince William. He was then the Duke of Cambridge. He is now the Duke of the Prince of Wales, and the Prince of Wales is the heir apparent to the throne. Jamaica had a lukewarm reception to him. Lukewarm. Always some people will be starstruck, but it really hit home that this foreign king, as Jamaica head of state, really don't represent the people of Jamaica. And then Bam Wadam, shortly after, Queen Elizabeth died, and her son King Charles inherited the throne. No Jamaicans had any say in that. So this confluence of events have caused us to push forward now to continue the reform. Now that we started, everybody wants everything to happen all at once. It's going to be very difficult to do it all at once. On top of it, we have to work out what it is that we agree on and what it is that we don't agree on. For those people who have expressed their views, by and large, the majority says, move on from King Charles and put a Jamaican in. We have problems with ourselves, but Jamaicans can do the job. Jamaicans can do the job. And although the monarchy has not done anything in Jamaica, the fact that the power is there and the authority is vested in, who knows? You know, my research tells me that the monarch, Queen Elizabeth, intervened in the internal affairs in Australia at one point around their parliament, and that caused a serious anti-monarchy movement. But let me wrap it up.
So tell me.
As a result of that, we have set up, and all the work done, we set up this Constitutional Reform Committee as an advisory and oversight committee to look on the work done before and to say, let us assess if that work remains relevant before we jump up and implement it. Because to make the change, the people will ultimately have to approve it. And that's what we have been working on. The committee is not working in secret. It's not a secretive committee. We're just starting out the work before we come to the public. But I had given a timeline that I would like the bill to be tabled in Parliament. And people have been asking, then if you want to table it so soon, what meaningful consultation you can do? The committee has been trying to sort that out because a lot of the information is technical. And unfortunately, we have a high illiteracy rate in the population. Civics is not taught in school. Many people know many things and know very little about how government is organized and how the state is. Very little. And even those who are learned still don't know as much as should be taught, as they should know. And that's really where we are. The work is made a little more difficult because everybody's suspicious of everybody else.
Mm-hmm. We have a question on WhatsApp. Yes. Nadine,
yes.
I think you have a question.
Yes, well, I have a comment first of all. Angela says, fruitful discussion. Joelle from Montego Bay, she has 4 questions, and some may have been touched on before. What difference will it make to the lives of Jamaicans? How is it going to benefit us as a nation? What measures will be in place about the government pocketing more money and leaving the other citizens to suffer? And what led to such a decision? And if they've had meetings to find out if Jamaica is for or against it?
All right. So I think I would have answered what led to the decision that from the time we got independence, we have been trying to complete the work of independence. And then when we got to the 60th year of our independence, the nation was invited to reflect, and the government was also invited to reflect. When the representative of the Queen came, the lukewarm reception signaled that Jamaicans are not so wedded to this form of government at all. And then the Queen died, and people feel that they do not at all identify with King Charles, the 3rd King of Jamaica, who lives and is from a foreign land, lives in a foreign land and is of a foreign land. Because life has been so hard on the economic front in Jamaica, people don't think of anything other than their bread and butter. That is why some people think that they're entitled to make a living by committing crime and would want to justify it, that they should go and rob and steal because they're in need. Some people want to justify their bread and butter issue by making a living in confusion. They must walk and sell in the street. It's really an injustice to us. Important as bread and butter issues are, we have to learn to do that in an orderly way. So every time the question is asked, how will it benefit us? If people don't hear directly that they're going to need more money in my pocket right away, it's as if they hit their feet and say, don't matter. Think of it like this. If when you qualify yourself academically, it allows you to compete for higher paying jobs. When you're in the process of qualifying yourself, you can't immediately get the high job, until you finish the process and get your certification. Are you then going to say, boy, if we can't get it right now, we're not going to do it?
We have another question from WhatsApp. What do we lose by leaving the monarchy, and what will we gain as a nation if we leave? I don't know if you should answer that question.
Well, I don't know. I can only ask, what are we gaining now? Here is one simple point that grieves me personally. We can't even go to the country that our monarch lives in without getting a visa. Many Jamaicans and people who went to England as part of what they call the Windrush generation. The policies of the government there have been racist and discriminatory to the point where you have a Windrush scandal. These are our people, our relatives. So I have been trying to look at the benefits of having a head of a state in the form of the king. The king can't even tell the government of the UK to remember, say, I am also king of Jamaica. Make the people come and travel, because we're an island people. Traveling and seeing other places matter to us. It's not like we can walk across a boundary line and find ourselves in another country. We either have to, and we can't swim either, because nothing is near enough to us to swim.
Before you
travel on boat or plane.
Yes, before you have to leave us, Minister. There's a question that someone asked me to ask you, and they heard a comment where you said that the process to move to a republic is clearly laid out in the Constitution. And they are saying that they would love for you to tell them, because I know, for example, that the bill has to be tabled, they have a period that you have to wait so that you can have public consultation. One of the biggest conversations people are having is, we need more consultations. But I think our forefathers contemplated consultation, which is why they had a period of tabling the bill. So could you explain to us, when you do table a bill, what happens after that?
Yes. So don't take it for granted that everybody know what you mean by bill. Bill is the document that eventually become a law after it goes through the process and is passed by Parliament. Right. You have $100 bill too, and you have to bill that.
Right.
All right. I think some people think that at this stage, when we are embarking on constitutional reform, we can do anything we want. We could have done it that time of independence. But right now, our hands are tied by what is set out in the Constitution as the supreme law. Section 49 of the Constitution set out the process. It's a complex process, but it is designed to allow time to talk to the people and inform the people and educate the people about the law. So to pass a law, you go through a process, and it is the Parliament that has the power to pass laws. And laws are passed for peace, order, and good government. And we've been struggling with all three areas. So you have to develop the law first, and there's a whole set of process. If you listen to me when I make my sectoral debate contribution, I've been spending time since I've come into government when I was Attorney General to explain it. But I know people don't understand it until it hits them. All right, so when you table the bill in the Parliament, and tabling means you officially place it before the Parliament. You can't start the debate on it until 3 months pass. So what do you do with those 3 months? You use those 3 months to tell the people what is in the bill. Because I can't have all of this conversation with you now, and not everything we talk about get into the bill itself. So we have to be very careful that we think that it's only at this stage that we have to talk?
Is that a good question?
Right? Because when you talk about the bill that is going to the people, you have to actually talk about what is in it. And I know everything that we are talking about now can be put in it or will be in it. So there is a 3-month period before you even start debating it to make sure the people in Parliament.
I want you to, sorry to cut you. Sorry to cut you, Minister. But I want you to repeat what you said a while ago about not everything that we're talking about can and will be in any bill for the constitutional reform. I think that's a very important point.
Because Minister Morgan, there are different levels of law, and not all of the details that are important to make a law work for you to enforce it and implement it actually go in the Constitution. The Constitution have the broad principle, and it has what we would call the imperatives to guide you. So, for example, how the office of president will actually run, that will come in a separate act of parliament. And that is a level of law that's called ordinary legislation that's below the Constitution. And then you may have regulations that specify now the nitty-gritties. So it's not everything that will go in the Constitution. That's why we have to, it's going to be an ongoing process of education. I think some people believe that everything relating to the office of president and everything about the republic will go in the Constitution. No. But if we don't make the first change to abolish the king as king of Jamaica and establish the office of president, we won't have anything else to deal with, because all of those other things will flow from making this first important change.
And on that point, Hawthorne White from Spanish Town has 2 questions for you. He says, if Jamaica becomes a republic, should the government rename the Jamaica Houses of Parliament to the Parliament of the Republic of Jamaica? And 2, should the government make a new name for the Jamaica Constabulary Force to the Jamaica Police Force?
I would like the word force to be taken out of the police, and it speaks to police services.
Right.
That's just me personally. So this is a big question. Do we change the name of Jamaica to the Republic of Jamaica? It's not something
that was on TV the other night, and a lot of people were saying, them love Jamaica, why are we going to change Jamaica?
All right, so we can do both. We can do both. So we can set in the Constitution that Jamaica means the Republic of Jamaica. So right now we have a definition of Jamaica, which includes like the Pedro Keys and all of that, what you call all the little islands forming Jamaica. We can still use Jamaica because everybody is already associated with the short form Jamaica, brand Jamaica, Jamaica land we love. That's not a big issue because we can define Jamaica to mean the Republic of Jamaica and use the term Jamaica anyway.
Right. Perfect.
So yes, some name changes will have to come, right? So we would have to work those out. But Jamaica is an established brand. Becoming the Republic of Jamaica doesn't necessarily mean that you have to change the name. Some people suggest that you should. Some say it's not necessary. We can find a way to make the Republic of Jamaica to mean the Republic of Jamaica. That's a big one.
Right. 2 final questions before you go. The first question is, there are a lot of things that if we become a republic that we're gonna have to change. For example, the uniforms, the badges. That could you tell us some of the things that we may have to change as a country?
All right. So it's funny that the person asked about the constabulary force. Both the Jamaica Defense Force and the Jamaica Constabulary Force, the uniform is specified, and the button of the uniform actually carries a crown on it. And it is a crown for Queen Elizabeth. Right now, we are required to change all of those out and put the crown representing King Charles. You know how much money that involves?
Yes.
So that's what we say. Make we hold
Let's
that
do it
right
one
now.
time.
We are in the process of changing out King Charles.
Right.
Instead of spend that money and spend it again, let us just wait until the end of this change and make it. But there are a lot of things that we will have to consider changing. So yes, things will flow. But sometimes, you may change it in name, because the truth is the institution has already been Jamaicanized and it's working well in Jamaica. It's just that you want to complete the Jamaicanizing of it and change the name of it. That's why sometimes people do deed polls. That's why sometimes.
Yes. So tell us, before you run, you have started your public consultations. You were in Sam Sharp Square about a week ago, and I know that you have a whole lot of meetings and consultations planned. Could you give us an idea of where you're going next?
Our next public meeting. Now, the public meeting is not the only public consultation we have done. The Montego Bay meeting was the first town hall meeting, but we have been doing a lot of public consultation in other form. What we're deliberating on at today's meeting of the Constitutional Reform Committee, taking into account the concerns raised in the public, is to actually put out a schedule of events that we're going to do and publish them in different places so people can know if they want to show up. So even as we do town hall meetings, we also do small group meetings. Last week when we were down in Montego Bay, before we actually got to the Civic Center at Sam Sharp Square, we met with at least 5 focus groups. We had the St. James Ministers Fraternal, we had the St. James Association of Justices of the Peace, we had the Rotary Club, we had the Kiwanis Club, we also met with the Montego Bay Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We've been doing a lot of meetings with the youth. I have met with the National Youth Council, began with their executive, then the bigger meeting. Members of the committee, the youth representative of the committee, Sujay Boswell, he was out in Westmoreland doing meetings. We will put out to inform the public how much we have done. We have had smaller group meetings. I met with the executive of the Jamaica Umbrella Group of Churches. When I go to my constituency and I have a little community meeting, I use the opportunity to tell them, you see, this is an age where you can do a lot of things a lot quicker. Because everybody doesn't have to gather physically in a location for you to talk to each other and see each other and reason out with each other. There's a lot of things that people don't know, and because they don't know, they ask a lot more questions. That's understandable. But there's also a lot of false information going out, false information, and that's when it becomes dangerous. We can't complete all of the education that needs to take place in the nation in this process, because that ignorance issue is bigger than us. It involves the Ministry of Education, all of that. But out of this dialogue, out of this reform process is also going to be a side dialogue with the Ministry of Education about civics going back in the schools. That question has been spoken about so often.
We have 1 minute left.
We will hear from you. We will hear from you. If you are interested in the governance structure of Jamaica, changing up, constitutional reform should matter to you. Your voice matters, your views matter. We want to hear from you. This is the age of technology. Use it. Constitutional reform at mlca.gov.jm is an email address. We have a telephone number for WhatsApp. I will give it to you, Minister Morgan, since this is a feature. We can pass it to Nadine Blair and we can put out the
Thank you very
information.
much.
And we will tell you where we are.
It's 12 o'clock.
You can reach us.
Thank you very much, Minister. Really appreciate it. And I didn't say it when you came on, but good morning, Minister. That's the name of the show.
Good morning. You're taking me to afternoon. I think you couldn't have chosen a better station for this program.
Definitely. Thank you very
I
much.
really think
The
so.
entire
Thank
staff
you.
here is smiling. Thank you, Minister. Really appreciate it.
I hope I have been in some small way helpful.
Yes, you
to
have.
clarify some of the
Definitely, you have. We're
right.
getting the feedback. It's very positive. Thank you, Minister. And we have to run to our meeting. We have to run out of the studio and give Love 101 back their station. But I want to thank you for joining us for our first show. See you guys next week, Wednesday at 11 o'clock. Nadine, thank you very much
Not a
on
problem.
the switchboard right there. Thanks to the team from Love 101 FM, the family station. I think I can apply for a work here, you know. Without the radio price.
Good training.
Stand in line. Stand in line.
Have a wonderful day, Minister. Take care.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to the listeners.
And good afternoon to you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for tuning in.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And thanks again to Minister Marlene Malahoo Forte. I felt like I was in university a while ago. My goodness, so much information. And of course, hosted by the Honorable Robert Morgan, Minister, for Minister of Information. And we thank you so much for making it Love 101 and listening to Good Morning Minister. Catch us again next week, 11 a.m. for another program in the series. Stay with us, Midday Prayer.